very much, and thanks for everybody for coming along. I'll just share my screen here. Okay, so you'll see a link along the bottom then of that tiny URL at O for Office 365 NI, and that's where we would have a very comprehensive case study of all our work in as a showcase school, and you can flick your way through that, and it might be useful to pick some ideas out of that as well, following on from this. But I wanted to start off with staff development, because I think no matter what, there's been a lot of talk about a year to prepare for lockdown, and we have years of experience in teaching, and you still continue to teach and then be expected to wave a magic wand and be able to put on a gold llama jacket and be a performer online. And it's important that I think I spent a wee bit of time just talking about what we've done. So we've been in Office 365 for probably about 2-3 years, and that's our staff notice board, and that's how our staff get quick access to things like where's my cover work, what's the school calendar, what's the morning briefing from the principal, where do I get my reprographics forms, where do I get our information about school improvement, our assessment and reporting charts. And then we'll also link in here what is on this week and what is on next week. And it's important that staff get used to that so that we could then very easily move along in any of our training sessions and begin to introduce this, which is our Office 365 training. And we'll take our staff development time and we'll work through aspects of this, and have spent the last 3-4 years dealing with this. But even if I wanted to go to Teams now and the latest development on files, it'll be there. If someone asks for a bit of help on something, then we will give them a hyperlink direct to a page. Or if we find that someone wants help with something that we haven't maybe got training material on, we'll create it for them. And we like to create our own because we're able to give experiences of what we actually do, and therefore the screen grabs of what someone else is doing, because you're more likely to go to a friend next door and ask for help than maybe come, to someone else who maybe might be slightly intimidating with more experience. And our staff development, we think over the last number of years has served us fairly well. That's our posters in every room. It's our ESAGs, it's our school improvement plan. But we've been working on engagement with homework, and working on how you do marking and how you make that effective with feedback, and how cognizant of the workload, how that can be done efficiently and effectively. And we've spent a bit of time with Ross Morris McGill's books, and we've used those as examples of some practice we could do. And we've asked staff, why would you mark, and what do you expect to achieve from that? And therefore, we sought to establish a rationale that we think has left us in a good place for remote learning, because we had already talked about less marking and more feedback. We'd already talked about how you'd use it as a tuning fork to determine your own plan and move forward. And so our thing then was, that was our intended impact 2 years ago, and we were curious to see how that would work out for ourselves now in the during lockdown. Okay, and so the last staff development day, we had asked staff, as we'll always do in staff development, share your best practice, and they were very good in putting little videos together from 3 to 5 minutes of what they have done in remote learning with feedback and engaging students. Because I think there's two things: engaging staff in training all the time and skill themselves up and help each other out, but also doing it in a way whereby what works well for keeping students engaged and supporting students. So let's look at our management advice then in terms of remote learning, and what we said to staff to do and not do, and not get carried away with sometimes what becomes a snowstorm of requests, either from parents or in the media, or what seems to be shown as fancy ways of doing things. So we said, let's look at last lockdown and to our students in general. Incremental work is what works best. We want improvement opportunities for students, and we're back to our usual formative feedback. But we were very clear that we would have no formal assignments without first having gone through proper teaching strategies, and that we would not be putting up endless amounts of work and just assessing and testing students as we go along. We're teachers, and we engage with students, and we try to help them to improve. And we were very clear as managers with staff. Likewise, class meetings has been a bugbear in the media, in terms of people thought this is the easy way of having a teacher in everyone's houses and continuing and doing their jobs. We were very clear that it was a tool like any other to supplement our current good practice. And it's good for contact and for relationships and for the social dimension and for engaging with students. But we serve a constituency of students most of whom are in rural areas with poor broadband and maybe not with access to a device individually. So we couldn't count on students being there at one time with a device each. And so therefore the focus in our lessons is make it accessible at all times, make sure we're working Teams and class notebook, and we have our audio and video prompts embedded in there, and I'll show you how we have been doing that. And we amended and had passed on to Mark our AUPs. We amended those 2 years ago when we'd made this transition, and a lot of that was about etiquette online and your engagement and how you would work in a manner that's positive with that. But basically our pedagogy is to be engaging and to make sure that if we're putting efforts in now in improving practice for remote learning, it should be something that we could continue to use and not just something that we're doing in the short term. Okay, and finally then, so all work and all of this working every day with every class and meeting every class and engaging with every class. You don't lift books every day. You don't lift books and formally mark books for every task that is set in class. And so therefore we were very clear, not all work's meant to be marked, not in a formal sense of lifting it up, but that there must be a regular checking of that in terms of giving feedback, communication, sampling that all the times. We've got an ability to annotate our screens and take screenshots in class notebook to correct those little common mistakes, to illustrate what a good one looks like in best practice, and to replicate as far as possible what you would naturally do in class. But we were very clear that is not lifting and marking every single piece of work. That's how to kill everyone, demotivate them, and make them switch off. So we were very conscious in student support, how we'd review that, how we would intervene, and how we'd support them. So first off, we'd train them. We have our, and this applies equally to parents and also for students. We have our school website, we have our e-learning and e-safety sections, and there's training material from the very basic introductions to a lot of things like how to avoid mobile data bills and things like that, that has been a great concern for many parents. Okay, and there again, just like for parents, for our staff, we have our Microsoft Teams, class notebook. How do you do any of these things? But again, most useful thing on the very first page, there's a little embedded video, how to do these things. That's an introduction, but that's the most common things. How do I hand in my work? How do I access my work? Okay, and again, if there are requests from parents, very often we'll just pass them on a link to a page as well. Okay, so how do we review how students are doing? So it's open dialogue and communications. Parents will ring in, we will ring home, we'll be in contact with students at all times. We'll get our little bar graphs of what's going on across varying departments. We'll have forms and spreadsheets to give us our information, and we'll have ongoing class reviews in the tabs that are available in Teams. So I know there's bits of work that are missing there, but I also have an insights tab that gives me little graphs here that tells me student by student how much time they're on, what times of the day they're on, and so on and so forth. And I can use that to whatever means it suits me. But it's important to be really positive as well. So there's lots of little simple, colourful things, and it doesn't matter what age they are, maybe with the exception of A-level, but certainly even up to my year 12s, like an odd wee sticker that I can all be personalised, something that's easy to drag and drop into work as you're glancing over and checking that work's been done. We've also been very clear that we send little postcards home of congratulations, or, you know, you're grafting well, keep it up. And it is important that this and certificates, we send a copy to the student's email as well as sending it to the parents. And that's an example there of certificate of appreciation we'll send out to students who are doing really well, and that includes students who had difficulty at the start and have really got their act together, or even at times, you know, have made as big an effort as they possibly can. Again, students and parents will both get a copy of that. So how do we ensure that support? We have our ongoing communication with form teachers and year groups. We've got our live assemblies, and they are good for any type of informal communication, formal notification of things, prayers, reflections, and so on. We have phone calls home. So initially we will inform parents. Typically we'll say, you know, we're aware there may be mitigating circumstances, but just to let you know that he's missed a couple of deadlines or is behind a little bit of work. But if that persists, we'll follow that up then with form teachers and year heads with phone calls and have conversations. And in our spreadsheet where teachers will put in what students are behind in, we'll clearly and obviously put in any feedback we have pastorally from home. Okay, we'll be sensitive to information, obviously, but basically to let them know that there's something amiss, or there's difficulties for a week, or whatever the case might be. Okay, and so we recognise the best efforts on the part of students and parents, and we'll carry that back as well to staff. And then teachers will have their engagement with their class posts, emails, and meetings as they see fit. Okay, and just to give you an idea then, so we had our survey, fairly open-ended. These are the sort of questions we asked parents. And so therefore, in terms of can they access the work, 95% yes, 5% largely because of either shared devices or internet issues that covered that. Is my son able to submit work? 98% yes. Is he engaged with his teachers online and communication and so on? 95% yes. Learning resources, are they appropriate, varied and engaging? 90%. Opportunities for submission of work, 99%, and feedback given to his son at least regularly, 95%. And it's important that we get that back, because that was probably as important to share with staff, because there's an awful lot of, there can be bad publicity at times, or there can be one or two parents who are the most vocal parents, and puts a huge amount of pressure on staff. And just even, I think staff really appreciated even that coming back, and that good news that parents don't often ring up to say, well done, we're very happy with the work. But we got it in that feedback, and staff are very appreciative of that. Okay. Some class examples, I'm going to typically work through my English and what I would do. So in English, we have a shared department master notebook. So we'll use Microsoft Teams, and within that, there's a notebook. It's a blank canvas binder that you can basically put anything into. And we do it by departments first. And when we began doing this several years ago, we didn't let anybody go by themselves. We said, right, let's all chip in together. Let's all work in the back end and help each other out and share the workload. And when we're happy with something, then everybody can give that a go and see how we go. We've since gone on to individual class teams, but that was our starting point. And so in every classroom, we have wireless sharing from the likes of a Surface Pro or a tablet and so on. And likewise, so therefore we can carry on the same sort of practice, sharing resources, guides, samples of board work, inking, and make it interactive and engage our students. So it doesn't matter whether we're in class or in meetings or just doing wee audio and visual guides. That's the sort of thing that works very well with the students. It just makes it live and interesting, as opposed to giving them something that is a dead document shared online. Okay. And so therefore we'll use team posts and conversations, and this is typical of what we'll put up. But if I move to a new unit, so we're moving on to unit 4, section A, I'll say, right, lads, just watch the video. There's a wee link to it here. I'll also embed it down here where they can just play it directly in the post. I'll ask them to read through the first maybe 5 pages that are basically how the thing is constructed and how we're going to teach through it. And I'll ask them to read through that, but the video will have walked through it anyway. And then I'll give them a little short task maybe to start them off. Okay. And then, we can make it a bigger announcement. And again, you'll see same thing as we move along. I might say there's an introduction, there's a video embedded. I want you to work through, and I will have ticked over here. This is where the information and these topics are covered in your class notebook, and I numbered through the tasks for them, and the video will explain all that as well. All right. One thing we've found is that, as with all things, when you communicate with students, the more you communicate, the more messy it is to find things. So we've all been there in a paper trail of emails and a list of emails, and trying to go back and troll through a kind of a conversation stream. And sometimes the most basic thing, if there's been communication with home, that maybe that there's 2 or 3 bits of work that are outstanding, rather than trolling back and forward or actually looking for the most formal bits of work, I'll just basically put them in post, but I'll keep putting them in here as well. So a student will always, in the very first page of his class notebook, have a remote learning page, and he can troll through there, and that is free from conversations, questions, and so on. And parents have found that very useful as well. Okay, so this is typically what we'll do. I would do this in school, and I just do this when we're talking to the students, either in team meetings or just basically leaving this as feedback for them after they've done a task. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll use a little icon up in the top corner to let them know that that's audio visual feedback. That's the audio file that they'll play. I'll talk my way through how this is the answer to this task. And if a student understands, I know that, but that's okay there, that's okay there, but I had a difficulty with this piece here. If he hovered his mouse over this piece here, it will play that bit of the audio and jump straight to that bit of the audio rather than having to listen to the previous 2-3 minutes. So he can actually customize the support to him for the particular piece that he struggled with. All right. Another thing we found very useful is collaborative work. So very important for students when they are there by themselves, that they can chip away and work towards essay plans rather than giving them, there's a couple of tasks and there's a large essay to do. We'll give them the construct of that. We'll give them the framework of that. We'll part bake it for them and maybe do the first one for them here. But then we'll ask them to actually do some little bits and pieces themselves. And while for their safety, I haven't put their names in there, but effectively they will be chipping in here and conversing with each other. And it's one of those of write something, but write once, but comment on 3 other wee pieces. So they will actually find a piece of work that might be onerous as an essay plan at the start, but they'll chip away and they'll all start to fill this out and have a wee ongoing conversation here. And our feedback from the boys is, even when they're in school doing this for homework, is that they're never on their own. And I think that's never more appropriate now, even in remote learning. So setting tasks. Each student has their own section in a class notebook, and the students complete their work there. And you literally send a piece of work to them, and I'll make it very clear, even in a screen grab, that I want them to read this bit here. I want them to read this bit, and there's a wee audio description. Then I want them to complete this task that's over in here for them. Likewise, read that, and when I say read, it's not passive. There's still little things to think about, little activities to do, little bits of audio, visuals, or maybe previous examples of work from students, and then go and give it a go yourself. So we always give them some element of a part bake or some stepped progression before they try to do it themselves. And then only after that process has been gone through with the feedback to the whole class will we set them assignments to do. But even in assignments, we'll agree that and work on that in the department, and then we can all pull from the department assignments to each class. So typically there's an assignment that I would ask them to do, but even in there, I'll say, you got to remember we did that on that page there. Remember that little bit of audio we did at the start, talking through the poem. And then I will always include a video there, for example, of that poem. And that's me talking through. So rather than just leaving the ink here and leaving it like that, or audio, I will actually have a video of me actually inking through that so the thing comes to life for them. And again, they can skip through that to areas where they have difficulty, or they can play and jump to bits where they want to just reinforce their understanding. All right. Again, not leaving them by themselves. Again, we'll go back to workload. So in terms of tasks, so there's individual pieces of work that I have set for the students, but if I give them that task, that goes to their individual sections. I'm not going to go and mark every single little bit. These are tasks, these are little classwork tasks that I'll ask them to do, not just big assignments. So I'll flick through that and I'll pick out what I, in common parlance called the good, the bad, and the ugly, and as well as the best ones, the common mistakes. And it's what you do in class. You'll check homework, so you'll ask for feedback, and then you'll reteach over wee bits. So I'll take these bits here and I'll aggregate them together, and I'll say, right, okay, there's a bit of audio of me talking through this common mistake. There's a bit of this is where it is structured properly. Okay, and I will, if it's coming up closer to an exam, I might do a video of that. Or I will ask them, right, lads, you're well used to now how you're going to apply the mark scheme. So I want you to peer mark each other's, and we'll ask for the right and common language to be used, and then we'll discuss that in class. And these things work in class for homework so that they're not remote and that they are helping each other out, and likewise works in remote learning. Very quickly then, to finish off, Microsoft Forms, we'll use these again for something like self-evaluation, which I'll show you in a moment, or just little quizzes, little starter for 10s and things to help them out in terms of getting there and making sure they've done the basic reading. Okay, but in terms of self-evaluation, this takes 3 minutes. We have a junior bell at the end of the day at 3:27 and a more senior bell then at 3:30. And I can get this done in class on their mobile phones very quickly. We've done essays. We've asked you to give me a bit of feedback on how you've done on that. And from that, I can have a quick look at this heat map here. These bottom 3 here, I'm concerned about. I have a lot of blue there. There's something they're not getting. So I'll make a record and we'll put it up in the classroom, or I'll put it in my class notebook. Clear, concise, opening paragraph, including the writer's language, using the first person I to show you're having a personal response. And we'll keep hitting in that in the following weeks after that to make sure we're bringing the bottom end up. And that doesn't matter whether it's done remotely or in class, reinforcement and support. Or we'll ask the student to identify, there's my best paragraph and why I've got a target because there's an example of a weak paragraph, so they know exactly where they are. Okay, so just finally to recap where we are with our ongoing practice in remote learning or in general, everybody needs time. Staff and students need to be trained, and we need to be cognizant of the fact that if they haven't been doing it for a while and they are jumped into remote learning, that they're not left isolated. So they need to have some kind of care and contact with them, and need to have ongoing support. Finally, that in terms of technology and buzzwords of making it all fancy and online, whatever else, is technology assisted learning. It's learning first, technology second. And we have to be conscious of workload, that it needs to work easily, and it needs to be something that is actually going to improve us as we move forward, not just in lockdown, helping students to catch up when they come back on the basic core principles, and making sure that basically that actually this is a way of engaging them better when they are working at home. And lastly, staff have to share best practice and lighten their load, and it's the only way they're going to manage their workload.